On today's episode, we discuss which is worse, losing a big fish right at the boat or getting skunked all day long. We also talk about Hobie being purchased by Bass Pro Shops, an underrated pond lure, whether or not to add technology to your kayak, backpack bags, tiny boat builds, the weirdest thing we've ever hooked, and more on today's episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. Today's show is jam-packed with a great poll question for you all, a ton of interesting topics from the mailbag, but before we dive in, you should dive into all the great gear and deals over at American Legacy Fishing. It's super easy. You fire up your web browser, you type in those magic letters, www.americanlegacyfishing.com, and the industry's best rods, reels, line, and baits are right there at your fingertips. Brands like G. Loomis, Shimano, Daiwa, Dobbins, Lew's, 13, Abu Garcia, Rapala, Berkeley, 6 Sense, Sunline, Power Pro, Seaguar, you name it, they have it over at ALF. So whether you're in the market for budget gear or high-end gear, new gear or used gear, whatever it is, American Legacy Fishing has what you're looking for. So go check them out over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. And as always, you can use code TACKLETALK5. That's going to get you an extra 5% off your purchase, both regularly priced and sale items. Plus, you can get an extra 10% back on your order if you're an American Legacy Elite member. Those two things in conjunction with each other equal big savings on your favorite fishing gear. So again, the website is www.americanlegacyfishing.com and use code TACKLETALK5. All right, folks, today we have a great 1-2 punch of an episode for you. We've got a great fishing poll segment and then a lengthy overdue mailbag session. So let's not waste any time here. Let's dive headfirst into our topics here today, and we'll start with the fishing poll. So this week's installment of the fishing poll asked you, the Tackle Talk listeners, which is worse, getting completely skunked or losing a big fish right at the boat or right at the bank? And as always, I will make my case for what I think the right answer is, and we'll talk about my opinions, and then we'll actually get to see what you all thought. All right, so let's break this down here. I think we have to weigh both of these options pretty carefully. Option one, getting completely skunked. This is less heartbreak in my mind and more broadly demoralizing. I think this is just a confidence killer. And there's a couple emotions that pile up when I have a really bad day on the water and I get skunked. Number one is this feeling of helplessness, where I kind of second guess everything that I know about fishing. The questions race through my mind of like, do I even know what I'm doing? Why did I have such a bad day? And I know that other guys near me actually caught them. What am I doing wrong? Maybe I'm not as good at this as I think I am. It just starts to flood into my mind like an avalanche of self-doubt and negativity. And I don't know if you guys get like that, but it's a real struggle for me when I have a very, very bad day on the water. The second emotion I get is regret. And this one's a little different and probably less common for people, but it's something that I struggle with a lot, is if I have a really, really tough day on the water, because I'm such a kind of analytical, results-oriented person, my brain just starts thinking of all of the things that I could have done that day that were productive instead of wasting all of my day out on the water and getting skunked. So my brain goes to like, man, you could have taken this time and mowed the lawn. You could have gone to the grocery store. You could have done your laundry. I could have went and saw friends. I could have spent time with family. I could have worked on Tackle Talk. I could have done so many productive things, but I didn't, at least in my eyes. In my eyes, because it wasn't a successful day on the water, that day was a little bit wasted. And that's an attitude problem overall that I struggle with sometimes when I get skunked or when I have these really bad days. I know I shouldn't do that. I know I should think very differently, but I'm just being honest. That's where my mind wanders. And then my third is frustration. I just get put in an overwhelmingly bad mood because I got skunked and because the day didn't go how I planned it to go. And I know that you can say, well, Andrew, any day on the water is a good day, or a bad day of fishing beats a good day at work, or whatever other bumper sticker slogan or whatever you want to toss my way. But the truth is that I am results oriented, and I didn't get the results that I wanted or that I thought I should have got, and that puts me in a bad bad mood. So it just sours things for me when I spend a day out there doing what I love, which is fishing, but then it puts me in a bad mood or a sour mood because I sucked it up out there on the water. So that's sort of a peek into my mind when I get completely skunked. I'm not proud of it. I know I should be more positive. I should look at, learning experiences, but that's just an honest look into my thoughts and emotions when I have a day that's that bad out there on the water. But then on the flip side of this question, you have the gut-wrenching experience of losing a big fish right before you land it. And this is a situation where you not only hook that big fish, but you get to see it and you can confirm that this is the type of fish that you spend hours and hours chasing. That was your moment and you blew it. Now, again, I know that's harsh, but about half the time that can be true. It can be user error. You swung the fish when you shouldn't have swung the fish. You tried to boat flip him. You didn't keep the rod tip down to keep that fish from jumping. You should have changed the hooks out. You knew that they were rusty. You knew they were bent out, but you didn't do it anyway. You should have retied your knot. You knew it was fraying, but you just said, a couple more casts. There's so many things that you could have done differently. And that's the half that kills me because I leave that moment feeling like it was my fault. I failed. I could have prevented that situation from happening. The other half of the situation, things just happen, right? So there's nothing you can do if a fish just happens to shake that hook free on some sort of fluke motion or something. So I guess there's two different feelings there. But if it was my fault, shame on me. I am now down because I should have been better. I spent 5 hours chasing a fish of that caliber, and then when I finally hooked it, the moment was too big for me and I didn't perform. On the flip side, if it wasn't my fault and it was just bad luck or bad chance, well, now it's the hopeless feeling of doing everything right and still not landing that fish. So either way, it's a soul crusher because you were 95% of the way there to that trophy fish and you just couldn't finish the job. So they're both awful feelings, but which one is worse? For me personally, I think the worst feeling is getting completely skunked all day long. And it basically boils down for me that if I get completely skunked on a full day on the water, that means I wasn't able to put anything together. Andrew, it was my fault. I was not doing what I should have been doing, obviously. I was in the wrong area. I was throwing the wrong baits. I chose the wrong lake or river. I didn't adapt. I didn't learn. I put nothing together that could work. And that's a horrible feeling over a long period of time. I said at the beginning here, but this is way more demoralizing than just a split-second heartbreak of losing one fish. It's a broader feeling of failure that's way more introspective to me about what did I do wrong or what didn't I do right. It's more of that than just a 5-second mistake or an unlucky jump at the boat or something. So I know that's getting pretty deep there, but when I sat down and really tried to think through this question, I actually felt worse about a whole day out there getting skunked than I did losing a big fish at the boat. So that's my pick, but I also want to go on record here and say that before I even open up these poll results, I would bet almost anything that you guys overwhelmingly chose the opposite that I did. I would bet that the majority of you that voted in this poll choose losing a big fish right at the boat. So I just want to get that out there before I actually open up these poll results that's my prediction here. Okay, so let's see. I am opening now and... Okay, so yeah, you guys did disagree with me, but it was a little bit closer than I thought it would be. So 55% of you chose losing a big fish at the boat as the worst feeling, and 45% of you chose getting completely skunked. And I get it. I really do. In the moment, losing a fish at the boat seems worse because it's an actual moment that you can pinpoint the exact second that it happened to you, and you feel that rush of emotions all at once. It hits you like a tidal wave. While getting completely skunked, that is like a multi-hour, drawn-out process where that frustration is spread out over a long period of time. So I understand why somebody's gut reaction would be to choose losing a big fish right at the boat. So I look at this as like both of these are very painful, but losing a big fish right at the boat is kind of like accidentally cutting yourself with your pocket knife. Like it could be really bad in the moment. Maybe you need a stitch or two even, but getting skunked all day long is like getting 1,000 paper cuts throughout the day. It's prolonged, it's torture. And at least if I lost a big fish right at the boat, that means I was doing something right throughout the day. I targeted that fish. I got the bite. I set the hook. I fought that fish. If I'm getting skunked all day, I can't do anything right. I'm so far off the right path that I can't even get the bites I need to lose a fish. So for me, it's getting skunked. But for you guys, obviously, it was losing the big fish right at the boat as the worst feeling. So that is this week's poll question. Keep your eye on the Tackle Talk Instagram page, as we usually post this question about midweek on our story, and we leave it up there for 24 hours for you all to vote. All right, now let's get to the second part of today's episode, which obviously is the Tackle Talk Podcast Mailbag. So if you want to submit your questions, you can head over to tackletalkpodcast.com/mailbag. Super easy to submit your questions, and you never know, you might hear it coming up on an upcoming episode. That's what these folks did. So let's jump right in here. The very first question we have today is from Kevin, who says, "Hey Andrew, I'm a fairly new listener. I've been listening for a few months now, and I enjoy the content, especially your non-biased, non-judgmental way of discussing topics. I feel like you try and see things from both sides of the coin. My question involves a very tender and touchy subject of forward-facing sonar. I'm not new to fishing. I've been fishing my whole life, but most of that has been bank fishing for catfish, panfish, or wading in the rivers for trout. I loved bass fishing, but it was always hard to get into not having a boat. Last year, I got into kayak fishing, and I've fallen deep down the rabbit hole with it, and I am now obsessed. So much so that I already have a heavily rigged out PWR 129 with 2 motors. The one thing I haven't put on my kayak is forward-facing sonar. I lean more toward the group of people that don't like it. I just use a cheap Lowrance Hook Reveal 7. I've been fishing tournaments all this year, well over a dozen. One thing that I'm coming to realize is not having forward-facing sonar is probably going to hold me back from having any sort of chance in these tournaments. I'm a competitive person and I love fishing these tournaments, but lately I'm feeling discouraged seeing everybody else with forward-facing doing well. I myself don't want it, but I'm feeling like I need it, and that's my dilemma. I'm entertaining the possibility of putting it on my kayak, but not without some pushback from within myself. I don't want to stir the pot with the whole forward-facing argument. So I guess what I'm asking is, can you give me a reason why I should still pull the trigger and get forward-facing sonar, or some sort of encouragement or reassurance that I still don't need it to win tournaments? Thank you for taking the time to read my question and possibly talk about it on the podcast. Thanks, Kevin." Oh boy, man. I pick these questions like ahead of time, and then I just kind of randomly put them in an order, and then we do them here on the show. And holy moly, did we start out with a doozy here. That, Kevin, is a great complex question, and to be honest, we could do probably a whole episode on that if we really wanted to. But I will start with this. I was in your exact shoes about 2 years ago. Like, same situation, same attitude, everything. And you guys know, I don't talk about forward-facing sonar on this show a lot because, frankly, I feel like the entire rest of fishing media has beat it into oblivion. It's been covered already from almost every angle imaginable, both pro and anti, all that kind of stuff, even though there is one angle that I would like to talk to somebody about, and hint, hint, nod, nod, I'm trying to set that conversation up here for the next couple weeks. I think that could be a really cool episode where we approach this from a little bit different light, but more on that to come. But about 2022, 2023, I felt the exact same way you felt. Everybody else started adding it to their boats and all that kind of stuff. It was gaining popularity, and I just felt like I was being left behind. I also had the added caveat where I felt like I couldn't accurately talk about the issue or talk about forward-facing or hold my own in conversations about that topic if I had never used it before. So I have my own personal feelings about it, which I keep pretty close to the chest, and I don't talk about it too much because I don't think there's any need to. But without saying too much, just by reading your question, I think we probably align pretty well on it. But long story short, in 2023, I actually bought it, and I added the capability of using LiveScope on my kayak. Now, therein lies the magic word that I think is the solution for you: adding the capability to use LiveScope. That's what I did. I made it so the way I wired my LiveScope transducer and my black box and everything like that, it was fully removable. And what that did was allow me to only take it with me when I absolutely needed it. Because my problem really early on was if I had it with me, I found myself wanting to use it more and more and having trouble turning it off. Even in situations where I knew that it wasn't going to help me, I felt like I was messing around with it and trying to incorporate it in some way into my fishing. And it was costing me fish because I wasn't making the instinctual moves that I needed to make to be successful. I was stuck messing with settings and panning around and trying to position myself to make that absolute perfect cast with it and all that kind of stuff that comes with forward-facing sonar. So what I do now is I keep it out of my kayak unless I absolutely need to take it with me that day. So I would say probably 85 to 90% of the time it stays in the garage, and I'm much happier that it is in the garage and not on my kayak. If it was on my kayak at all times, I would be tempted to use it more. So maybe for you, maybe you only take it to tournaments and tournament practices or something like that. Maybe you leave it at home and enjoy the regular fishing that you love to do in your free time, and the majority of the time you take your kayak out, but you only use that forward facing when you feel like you're handicapped in certain situations. That's what I did, and that's honestly worked for me really, really well. I don't use it much, but I have the ability to use it if I have to. And I look at forward-facing sonar as a benefit in certain situations for sure, but it's a net negative for me if I have it on my kayak in other situations at all. It's like a cell phone. If you want to limit your screen time, you can't have your iPhone in your hand. You have to go put it on the counter, put it in your bedroom, put it away, because otherwise, if it's sitting in your hand but it's off, the temptation is there just to pick it up and start scrolling again. It's the same thing with me and LiveScope. I have to be able to leave it at home. So hook your wiring up so that you have quick connects at your transducer and at your black box, and wire the through hauls appropriately so that you can take all of that off at any given time. And I think you'll find a happy medium. That's what I did. So I hope that helps a little bit. All right, the next question here is from Noah, who says, "Hey Andrew, I had a question for you based on the last few trips that I've been on. I mostly fish the New River in Virginia, and with the weather we've been having, there's been very little rain, so the dam has not been releasing much water at all the past few weeks. I decided I couldn't catch anything sitting at home, so I went out anyways. While I didn't have a bad day per se, the only fish that I could find were 12 inches and under baby smallmouth. While I'll never complain about catching something, I'm wondering if in those specific situations there's something you would change to target bigger fish better. For context, it's 5 to 7 foot deep of water at the deepest, and this time of year the water is covered in thick vegetation mats, which someone on Facebook recommended I run a chatterbait over after the fact. Curious on what adjustments you would make. I was catching all the small ones mostly on Neds and finesse underspins." Oh man, I feel like I just came off a question where I had like an okay answer and I felt pretty good about, and this one is the exact opposite because dude, I have the exact same problem that you do this time of year. Low, clear water is my mortal enemy. I went out last weekend and probably had a, 30 to 40 fish day, which is great, but my biggest fish was like 16 inches, and that's not good by my standards. I think I would like to see 18 up most days. So it's just that time of year where the squeakers are out in full force and the bigs are just few and far between. Now, you said you are in the river, so right now I usually target like deeper cover, train tracks, log piles, bridges, concentrated deeper spots when that water is low, because it just makes a lot of that water dead water this time of year. So I guess if there's a lot of vegetation though, which I know you said is mats, but if it's the New River, I'm guessing you might also be talking about those just giant sections of underwater weeds that come up almost to the surface, but not quite. If that's the case, yeah, running a chatterbait over there is something you can do. Wake baits, top waters, swim baits, glide baits, all that kind of stuff. But shoot, man, I'd try and find somewhere that has a little deeper water and hit them with like a jig or something that gets down there if you can in those kind of deeper pockets. This time of year just sucks. And when the water is low and clear, there's just not much you can do about it. So yeah, I'm ready for more water. I'm ready for cooler temperatures. I'm ready for true fall patterns. I'm right there with you. All right, the next question here is from Marcus, who says, "Hey Andrew, I just saw a video for a cool looking backpack called the Tardigrade. Jeff and Paul from AAA, who I know you know because you've been on their show before, were talking about it and it looked intriguing. They also make some very cool coolers. Have you heard of that company, and do you have any insights on whether or not that type of gear is worth it?" That's hilarious, I guess, because Marcus, I'm pretty sure I saw the same video that you're talking about, because after I saw it, I looked up that backpack and then I almost spit out my drink when I saw how much it cost. And Jeff and Paul can probably attest to this, because I messaged them right after I looked up that price and I said something like, am I reading that price right? Because you guys, if you're listening to this, the backpack that he's talking about is $350 for a rollable cooler style dry bag. And it's not just a shot at this company. This company, I think, is called Rugged Road. Not a shot at them in particular. There are a lot of companies that make an expensive version of a bag like this. Yeti, Ice Mule, there's a few others out there. And look, I'm all for cool products. I am, trust me. But at the end of the day, I also take my money and what I spend it on very, very seriously. And the rollable dry bag that I've been using for the last 5+ years works just fine for me. And it's $15 on Amazon. And I could buy 23 of the bag that I currently use for the price of one of the bags that you're talking about in that video, Marcus. I mean, I don't need fancy cooler features on my dry bag. My current bag is also plenty durable for the insane abuse that I put it through. I've only used 2 in 5+ years, so I've spent a total of $30 for 2 of them. So it just doesn't make sense for me to buy something like that tardigrade that you're talking about. And I met the guys that run that company at iCast, Rugged Road. Very nice guys. I wish them all the best. Their coolers were kind of cool. They were really lightweight. They also, I'm not 100% sure how durable they are because of how light they were. And it seemed like they probably had some sort of spray foam in between 2 layers or something. Do not quote me on that. I don't know the actual composition of their coolers, but it felt like a beefed up version of one of those styrofoam coolers that you would get on the side of the road. Like that on steroids is kind of what they felt like. So they were definitely cool, but I try and keep it as real gets here on Tackle Talk with you guys. I wish them nothing but the best, but a $350 dry bag backpack cooler thing is not going to be on my shopping list anytime soon from any company. Rugged Road, Yeti, Ice Mule, nobody. My $15 20-liter Marchway dry bag does just fine, and I'm sure some of you will ask, so yes, I will drop the Amazon link in the description to that dry bag that I currently use. Last time I checked, which was about 2 hours ago before I started recording this, it was about $15 on Amazon, and I used the 20-liter size. There's going to be a couple different options for you to choose from down there. I think they have 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 liters or whatever. 20 liter is the one that works best for me. Rollable dry bag, $15 instead of $350. But yeah, Marcus, it's funny you bring that up because I saw the exact same video you did. But like I said, nope, probably not on my shopping list anytime soon. Okay, the next question here is from Darius, who asks, what are your thoughts on Hobie? Short and sweet there. I like that. Thanks, Darius. I'm guessing since this question looks like it was submitted on September 24th, you're probably asking because you just saw the news that came out from Hobie, even though you didn't ask it in the question. I'm guessing that's what you meant. For those of you that missed it, White River Marine Group, who is owned by Bass Pro Shops, just bought Hobie kayaks. So essentially, Bass Pro now owns Hobie. Now, Bass Pro and White River Marine and that whole group also own Tracker boats, Ranger boats, Nitro boats, Triton boats, Sun Tracker, Mako, Regency, Tahoe. All of those brands are already owned by Bass Pro Shops. Bass Pro Shops and White River Marine also own Ascend kayaks, and now they're adding Hobie to that portfolio. So as with anything, I think I said this when the news first broke, even though I had heard that this was going to happen through the rumor mill months ago at this point. But when I saw the news article actually come out, I said, hey, as with anything, there are positives and there are negatives. The first big positive is that this could be a good thing for Hobie because Hobie was struggling big time. Like, look at any comment section, any message board, any chat, anything on the topic of Hobie lately, and you will see a ton of upset customers with problems with their gear. You know, the hulls are cracking, the pedal drives are malfunctioning or breaking, and there was a common theme of not getting the help from Hobie when they needed help from Hobie. So like warranty claims were slow or not happening. There were claims that like they didn't have parts. It was just a big mess. So honestly, this might be what Hobie needs to take a step in the right direction and save them with a company like Bass Pro Shops that has the resources to fix whatever's going on. I don't know, but that could be a positive in the end. Also, this will probably make Hobie products way more widely available. To buy a Hobie right now around here, there are like 1, maybe 2 dealers within about an hour of me if I wanted to actually go purchase a Hobie. I'm guessing this will mean now that Hobie will be carried at Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. I don't see why they wouldn't. They already have Ascend kayaks right now. They've got space for kayaks. That would be a positive if Hobie started showing up at big box stores like Bass Pro and Cabela's, I guess. Also, Bass Pro Shops has access to way better pricing and production arms and factories and all that kind of stuff than Hobie did. So I'm guessing they can probably purchase things at bigger quantities and keep prices down a little bit better than Hobie could. So there are definitely some positives that could come from this. Now, the negatives are, of course, big brand buys small brand and ruins the integrity and quality and customer service and attention to detail that smaller brand was known for. That is a tale as old as time. That could very well happen here. I don't know. They also mentioned that they were going to move production out of Mexico, where Hobie is currently made, and they will now produce Hobies in Missouri. So on one side, that's great, right? USA made, hopefully better quality. I am all for it. American jobs, American made. I'm a big fan of that side of things. But that could also come at a cost. So we will see. It's no secret that it's cheaper to manufacture things in Mexico than it is in Missouri. So I don't know if that will trickle down to the MSRP of a Hobie Outback or a Hobie Pro Angler anytime soon, but that's also a very real possibility. Prices might go up if they move production back to the United States. So at the end of the day, I don't really know what to say except time will tell. Same thing we said when, GSM bought Dobbins or any of the other 10,000 acquisitions we've seen over the past couple years. The industry keeps getting smaller and smaller by the day in terms of the number of actual independent companies out there, and you just hope that the big parent company doesn't ruin what you love about the original product. Will that happen here with Bass Pro Shops and Hobie? I don't know. We will probably see in the coming years. All right, the next question here is from Alex, who says, "Hi, Andrew. I'm a 12-year-old angler from New York. One day while fishing in the Hudson River, I felt my line go taut. Thinking I was snagged, I pulled, and the object began to move. When I pulled it out of the water, I realized it was a sock from a 12 to 24-month-old infant. I was wondering, what is the strangest thing you've ever caught while out fishing? Thanks for the podcast. Give 'em the beans, Alex." Well, Alex, it's always fun to meet a fellow distributor of the beans. Thanks for writing in. I appreciate it. Dude, I could give you a list of probably 100 weird things that I've hooked in my life. One of the funniest ones, Jeff and I were out muskie fishing like really early on when we first started targeting muskie, and I was throwing like sort of a Bondi style bait. You can look that up. It's more of like a vertical rip bait for muskie, and I thought I had one. I set the hook. I felt the weight. I felt it running one direction, so I leaned super hard into this fish. It felt like a giant. Jeff got the net. We got it about halfway to the boat, and then I realized it was only going one direction, and it wasn't really shaking or pulling or anything like that. So I figured it wasn't a muskie, and my excitement kind of dropped a little bit. I kept fighting it. I thought maybe there's a chance it was a big catfish or, I snagged a carp or something like that. But I finally got it to the boat after quite a fight, and it was an anchor. A full-blown boat anchor that I fought the entire time on like 80-pound braid on a muskie rod. That was a really weird one because for a long time in that fight, I thought it was an actual fish. We got a full anchor into the boat. Some other ones the past couple years, a remote control car that I actually caught was a pretty weird one. I've caught socks and clothes and shoes and all that kind of stuff. I caught a really creepy looking baby doll one time. Terrifying. That is like nightmare fuel. I caught a purse one time that still had all of the ladies' stuff in it. That was weird. I caught one of those rentable scooters, like the real bright orange scooters that you swipe your credit card on and you ride around big cities. I caught one of those in downtown Dayton a few years back. What else? I've caught a sippy cup. Yeah, some really weird stuff over the years. Pretty random, especially when you're urban river fishing like we do a lot of times. You're just going to run into some really, really odd things, the most of which is trash, but it's weird trash nonetheless. That's most of what we've hooked over the years. Okay, the next question here is from Klinus. I really hope I'm saying that right, man. I'm sorry. KlinISS. Klinus, who says, "Hi, Andrew. My mom and I like to fish new lakes and ponds a lot. What are some lures or techniques that are good at ponds that we don't know anything about? Most of our lakes are super weedy and shallow. I want to try an Alabama rig, but legally you can only use one hook in Maine, so is it worth it? I'm 10 years old and I'm from Maine. P.S. We have no electronics. My PB is 8 pounds. Tight lines, Klinus." Man, this is one of the really cool things I think about this show. A 10-year-old that loves fishing, knowing about the legality of A-rigs in his state, fishing with his mom and bonding, and wanting to know little-known or underrated techniques. Dude, when I was 10 years old, I was nowhere near that level. I was chucking like a bobber and a night crawler, probably catching bluegill and barely sufficient with like a spinning rod at that point. So the youth in today's fishing world is insane. The access to information you have, it shows you're obviously soaking it in. First off, just a tip of the hat, mind-blowing to you as a 10-year-old. But your questions. First, some underappreciated pond techniques. I would say the one that really comes to mind right off the bat is a fluke. I feel like in ponds, the tendency is to go like wacky rig or Texas rig, a lot of Senko style baits. Switch it up and throw a fluke. You can throw it on that same weightless EWG hook that you were going to throw that worm on, and you can rig it the same way that you rig a Texas rig, but then you toss it out there, give it some twitches, kind of like a soft jerk bait, and then match the color of the fluke to the color of your natural forage. So if it's a very bluegill heavy pond, go with a color fluke that closely looks like a gill more so than a shad, and throw it in the shallows, throw it deep, throw it wherever you want. I think flukes in general are really underrated in that pond setting, because if a wacky rig works as sort of like a dying bait fish, slow fall, twitching technique, a fluke should too. And also a weightless fluke is just more weedless and more versatile, I think, than a traditional wacky rig with a regular hook on it. So you can throw it in more places without getting snagged. That would be my recommendation. Try like a weightless Texas rig fluke. And then as far as A-rigs go, yeah, don't even get me started on Alabama rig laws and regulations. I think if I was elected president tomorrow, my first executive order would be that all 50 states immediately allow 5-hook Alabama rigs. I live in Ohio where you can only throw 3, and I think it's silly. You're telling me that I can throw a jerkbait with 9 hook points on it, 3 trebles at 3 hooks apiece, 9 hook points, but I can't throw an Alabama rig with 5 hook points. In fact, in Ohio, I think you can actually have 2 lines out at any given time, so technically I could probably have 18 hook points if I threw 2 jerkbaits at the same time. I can have 18 hooks at once, but not 5. I know that's like a simpleton way of looking at it, but I hate it. Free the Alabama rig. That is my campaign slogan, I guess, if I ever run for president. And let us throw 5 hooks everywhere. But yeah, in Maine, you have one of the strictest laws on the books. 1 hook, in my mind, is not worth it for an Alabama rig. That's just an oversized, overpriced, too clunky spinnerbait. So you could basically have 1 hook and then like 4 teaser blades with no hooks on them, which is probably what you'd have to do. You're going to miss so many fish and get so many short strikes on that. If it were me, I wouldn't even bother with it. I would stick with spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, underspins, things like that to get the flash you want. Okay, and the last question here is from Collins, who says, "Hey Andrew, I know you're a big kayak guy, but in a past episode you mentioned that you would take a nice kayak over an okay bass boat. My question is, have you ever thought about a mini bass boat like the ones you see on Tiny Boat Nation? Thanks, Collins." Oh boy, have I ever thought of doing that. Yeah, like look at my Facebook Marketplace and YouTube history, and you'll see pretty quickly that I spend way too much time watching people fix up old cheap boats and make them into those sick tiny boats that you see. It'll be like midnight, I'll be bored, I'll fire up like tiny boat build videos on YouTube, and then I'll start to look up before and after pictures, and then I say to myself, you know what, that would be fun. Yeah, I should try that. So I do that, and then that's usually followed by like an hour of getting really excited and looking on Facebook Marketplace for free or really cheap boats around me. And then reality starts to set in. You know, this is going to be really expensive. Where am I going to store this boat? Where am I going to work on this boat at? I don't have half the tools I need to do this job. Where would I even take this boat when I do finally get it finished that I can't take my motorized kayak? I really think the build itself for me would probably be the fun part. And then I'd have this awesome boat that I wouldn't use much because it's more beneficial able to use my motorized kayak in the places that I want to go. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense for me. But yes, to your question, I would love to spend like one winter just fixing up an awesome tiny boat and making it exactly how I want. I think that would be a blast, but realistically, it's probably just not in the cards for me anytime soon. All right, everybody, that is today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you that takes the time to listen to Tackle Talk. As always, you can find us on the web, tackletalkpodcast.com. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, all of those at Tackle Talk Podcast. And we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.